What's up, everyone? Good morning if you're on the West Coast. Good afternoon if you're on the East Coast. I'm joined by Cohn Phone Hall of Famer. If you've been watching this channel, you already know Ben Meyerson. It's Ben Meyerson. I'm Grant Cohn. The title of the stream today is How the Niners Can Fix the Jimmy Garoppolo Mess. This is Ben's idea and theme, and it's very good. And we're going to get to that. But first, there's news. In a sense, Matt Mayoko, who is the OG of 49ers beat writers. I love Matt Mayoko. I've known him since I was a little kid. Wrote an article yesterday, saying that trading Jimmy Garoppolo is now a long shot. If Matt Mayoko said, I think we could have figured that out on our own. But if he says it, I think it's a long shot. The two places that he could possibly start this year are Carolina and Seattle. And barring them making an offer for Jimmy, he's going to be a backup this year. And the best place for him to be a backup, according to Mayoko, is the 49ers. What do you think, man?
Well, I think to start off with the other destinations that he could probably go to, I'm going to rule out Seattle as a trade destination for multiple reasons. For one, they're in the division. For two, why would Seattle want to do that?
Thank you. They know what Jimmy Garoppolo is. They see him up close twice a year. Are you kidding me?
Well, and they also appear to be
DK would hold out if he got Jimmy Garoppolo. Oh, well, I'm never getting the ball again. There you go.
Well, and they might trade DK, so I don't even know what Seattle's trying to accomplish this season. In my mind, everything's headed for Seattle trying to tank for one of those quarterbacks who's going to be in the next draft class, which is supposed to be a very, very good draft class. So to me, they seem more like a number one overall pick contender than they do seem a Jimmy Garoppolo contender. Yeah. And then to go to Carolina, I think there's one situation where they do actually get Jimmy Garoppolo and where they do make the trade for him is that if they are going to or planning to draft a specific quarterback in the draft, let's say it's Malik Willis, and that guy just isn't available to them in their top 10 pick, they might have to trade for Jimmy Garoppolo because they won't have really many other options. If their draft board is a certain way where it's Malik Willis or bust, and they're not going to pick Kenny Pickett even if he's there, to me, that is the path to Carolina for Jimmy Garoppolo. And even then, I think the 49ers would have to take about half of the salary back from Jimmy Garoppolo or do some sort of deal like that where, they're not going to be putting all that money on Carolina. Carolina can't go into the season with Sam Darnold and Jimmy Garoppolo's full contracts on their roster. That would just be ridiculous. So, in terms of Jimmy Garoppolo being traded being a long shot, I agree with that. And I think the only thing that's going to change that is if a quarterback just gets hurt or something catastrophic happens to a team who's in a win now mode. So if you're banking on that, I don't have much confidence in that happening. And then in terms of Jimmy being a backup for the 49ers, to me, that seems like pretty much the only path right now, besides the other one, which we'll talk about next. But I think in terms of what the 49ers are willing to do, they're going to have to just let Jimmy Garoppolo sit on the bench for $27 million, which is insane. But I guess you get a third-round pick out of it.
What Matt said is that they're going to force, if he stays as a backup, that he would be forced to take a dramatic pay cut. And that Mayoko's saying he can leave. He could say, no, I don't want to be on the 49ers, but then he'd have to probably go be a backup somewhere else. And so your choice is be a backup. Jimmy's choice is be a backup somewhere else where they don't know him. He doesn't have the locker room in his pocket. It's a totally new situation. Don't know what's going to happen. Or be the backup here. The team loves you. Trey Lance is an unknown. He could falter. He could get hurt. And then Jimmy Garoppolo steps into a team where he knows the system, he knows the players, and he could be the savior once again in a contract year. From Mayoko is kind of selling it from the team's perspective. Like, hey, man, you could go be the backup for Mac Jones in New England for, whatever, like $3 million, or you could be the backup for Trey Lance for like maybe $10 million here. And I think it's not what you wanted, but you having surgery isn't what we wanted. I still think it's the best option for you to be here. And from Jimmy's perspective, it seemed like he wants to leave on principle, but it also seems like he wanted to be a starter somewhere. And if the best he can do, like the Mitchell Trubisky year off, where you're taking a back seat to someone, like, I mean, if he were to leave, would he sign a 1 year? He'd have to sign a 1 year deal somewhere, right? Because he's going to be a free
Most
agent next
likely.
year. So I don't know. Do you think it's in his best interest to be Trey Lance's backup for whatever the Niners offer him?
To me, in that situation, it sounds like the 49ers are essentially threatening to cut him or take a pay cut, right?
Right, 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 right.
And
Like, we'll
and
pay
that
you more than anyone else, but you're not going to get
right.
$27 million here. But we'll pay you more than the next best offer.
I still think if I'm Jimmy Garoppolo from his perspective, I might rather get cut just because I think that's what they've been planning all along. Now, I don't think there are any good quarterback destinations
Just to
left.
leave with your head held high and not be embarrassed. It's like, okay, now I'm the backup here. Like that's embarrassing.
Right.
Right?
And I think to have that team taken away in that sort of way where you're the highest paid player on the team and the team is forced to cut you, that to me is the most embarrassing situation for everyone involved, including the team, right? Because the team could have just cut him before the start of the new league year. This would not be an issue that it is right now. So, yeah, I think the 49ers' best option, if they're going to keep Jimmy Garoppolo on the roster, is to cut and re-sign him to a new contract. That to me is pretty much the only way you can get out of this if you're keeping him on the team.
I just don't like this idea, though. I mean, I
No.
understand the Niners trying to sell it to Jimmy, and I understand why Jimmy might want to do it because from Jimmy's perspective, he might think Trey Lance is trash. Trey Lance is going to flop. I mean, from his perspective, who knows? He might think, oh, Lance is going to fall on his face, or this offensive line is trash. He's going to get hurt. I get hurt behind this offensive line all the freaking time. Like,
Yeah.
I'll get another chance, and then I'll have Debo Samuel, George Kittle. I mean, I know I can, put up good numbers on this team. So why don't I just stay here as opposed to going to like Houston and backing up Davis Mills or something like that? So from his perspective, I can kind of see it. But from the Niners' perspective, it's asking for trouble. It's putting too much pressure on Lance. It's dividing the locker room. You want to get a good backup quarterback for $5 million? Go sign Cam Newton. Go sign Colin
Yeah.
Kaepernick. It'd probably be even cheaper. But you keep Jimmy Garoppolo here, and you're asking for trouble. I think it's a big mistake, and I think they're going to do it because we don't see eye to eye somehow, even though I'm quality control.
Nope, and they value that third round pick very highly. The third round compensatory pick that they could get if he's going to walk in free agency. Which, Grant, I see your reaction right now, but I'm telling you, I think
How good are the Niners at drafting between rounds 3 and 5? Really? Okay, they got Fred Warner, great, good, hell of a pick. They got George Kittle, great pick. They got Mitch Wishnowsky, Dre Greenlaw. Am I missing anyone here? That's
off the
5
top of
years,
my
like 4
head.
dudes.
Yeah.
What is their hit
I
rate in
mean,
round 3 through 5? Like 15%? Is it really worth it? They also
no.
got Trey Sermon in round 3. They also got Ahkello Witherspoon in round 3. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. For every Ambry Thomas, there's an Aaron Banks, right? So
We don't
I
even know if
think
Avery Thomas is good. They would play him
that's
10
the
yards off the ball and say, please don't get beat deep. Please don't do a PI. And then they replaced him. First thing this offseason, they're like, look, you're great, but we just spent a lot of money on a 25-year-old cornerback. So we'll see you in a few years. Maybe. All right. So don't do this, 49ers. I'm really
no.
disappointed that you're like trying to salvage this. You know it's bad for the locker room. They're like, we have a tight-knit locker room. We're above this. Word. You sure?
You want to find out?
You want to find out? Test it. All right, let's keep. Okay. So, Ben, tell the 49ers, talk to them. Tell the 49ers how they can fix this Jimmy Garoppolo mess that they've created.
Oh, it's pretty simple. Get Jimmy Garoppolo off the roster before week 1. And the reason the 49ers need to do this and they should be inclined to do this is because, in my mind, $50 million worth of cap space is a lot better than a third round compensatory pick. That just might be me. I don't know if I'm crazy, but what the 49ers can do is they can either cut or trade Jimmy if they can find a trade partner. But if they can't trade him, they can cut him right before week 1. And then they can actually go over his cap space to next season and double dip on the cap space that they would have already had with Jimmy Garoppolo. So to me, it's a pretty
what they should have done
simple
last year,
solution.
right?
Exactly. It's what they should have done last year.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of teams have taken advantage of this who just aren't spending a lot of money. Teams at the lower levels of the league, like the Jets and the Jaguars, teams like that. But if you have a team like the 49ers who are contenders or playoff contenders at minimum, and you add that kind of cap space to their offseason, it would be unlike any other team in recent modern history for an offseason. And then they would be able to actually go all in. And I think the reason that they would do it in the 2023 rather than this past offseason is pretty simple because they can see Trey Lance, because they can see exactly where he's at. If they do want to go all in with him, and if they are going to go all in with him, what kind of pieces do they want to put around him? Now, the Chiefs did a version of this with Patrick Mahomes after seeing one game of him, so they had a much higher level of confidence than the 49ers might. But from the team's perspective, yes, cutting Jimmy Garoppolo right before the start of the season is not a great look. And from a PR perspective, I know you're gonna rip them to shreds. People will rip them to shreds, and they'll get a lot of negative press. But ultimately, I think it's the best thing for their cap health moving forward.
Here's how they can sell it too. They can be like, look, we tried for the best, in the interest of the organization, we took this down to the very end, the deadline. Right. Jimmy sprung this surgery on us. We didn't know. It threw a curveball into everything. We tried our best. It didn't work. And you know what? No hard feelings. Jimmy Garoppolo did a lot for this franchise. At the end, he did what was best for him with this surgery. We're going to cut him so that, out of respect, he doesn't want to be here. We're going to cut him so he can find whatever he wants to, whatever's next for him in his career, in his life. We don't want to hold him hostage. I mean, they did that for Navarro Bowman. Just sell it as like, we out of respect for a great 49er, we don't want to have him as a backup. That's not fair. That's not right. Let's cut him and let him pick his own. I mean, you can sell it that way. It's like, look, it's not really our fault. He had the surgery, but we're going to do right by him. Okay.
Yeah, and John Lynch
your fans will buy it.
Right.
I won't.
Well, and John Lynch was selling it that way over the owners' meetings. Remember specifically what he said? He's like, Jimmy Garoppolo, if he's not a starter on this team, he's a starter or he's good enough somewhere else.
False. He's going to be a backup this year.
But you're right.
Training camp or someone else. Right. Jimmy Garoppolo's going to be a backup this year. And you know what? He should be. He's not that good. I'm so sorry. He's not. He's a product of his coaching and his supporting cast. He can't read the defenses, can't read the field. He can't move, can't stay healthy. He won't throw down the field. He won't throw outside the numbers. He is so overrated. And I guess it's the media or local fans that are so into his looks and his win-loss record. They just gaslight themselves and people who believe it. But the league, the verdict is out on this guy. It's out. Yeah. And you know what? I agree with how the league sees him. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, and the 49ers clearly have a much higher value for Jimmy Garoppolo than the rest of the league does.
Do they, though? They spent a decade's worth of first-round picks to replace him. That's why they really send a mixed message on this. They're like, we're holding out until this was. Dude, you sent the Deshaun Watson package.
Oh, yeah.
For the third pick in the draft. You didn't even get the first two picks. You were like, I don't care. Whoever's available with the number 3 pick, we like as much as Deshaun Watson. There was a world where Trey Lance goes to the Jets and the Niners are like, oh, whatever. As long as it's not Jimmy, it's fine. That's how much so they know. Kyle knows. And he's starting to drop these hints too. Jimmy's great. He's a real pro, but you can't get a hold of him in the offseason. Oh, that's good. I like that. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Cut him. That's how you fix the mess. And I feel again, I don't understand what the point is of waiting. You can't cut him now because he can't pass a physical. You'd have to give him $7.5 million to go away. Give him $7.5 million to go away. That's not my money.
I was going to say, Grant,
the money back on the salary cap if he signs somewhere else.
Exactly. And that's the thing with that $7.5 million injury guarantee. They get that money back as long as Jimmy Garoppolo is on a roster.
Yes.
And also, I want to dispel one other rumor before we move on, which is that somehow there are some people who will tell you, no, they're just waiting to get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo until they can re-up Deebo Samuel and Nick Bosa. That's when they're going to use that cap space. Yeah. None of those people are familiar with how the 49ers structure contracts, because every single time they've extended a player from his rookie deal, the first year number is actually lower than it was initially scheduled to be, or it's the same. So they're not saving any money. All they do with those players, in fact, what they do
cap numbers are not going up this year. It's going to go up in 2 years.
Yeah. Yes. Well, they always push money towards the end of contracts with these guys. So the idea that somehow they're going to create this cap space with Jimmy and then spend it all on Deebo Samuel and Nick Bosa is just false.
They don't front load deals. They don't. I still think that's a big reason why DeForest Buckner is not here. No one really explained it. Buckner said he was willing to meet him in the middle, and the Niners didn't even discuss. But I think we saw Buckner had a front-loaded deal with Indianapolis. The Niners don't do that. Do they do that? I don't. They did it with Jimmy.
They did it with Jimmy
in 2018, but that's because they knew they had all this cap space. It was like a particular quirk in their roster building because they started over in 2017. But they don't do that. They don't. No,
they don't.
So that's a quick fix. We fixed it. You're welcome. John Lynch. Scotty Dippin says, no way you can put Jimmy Garoppolo on the bench regardless of what happens in this competition, quote unquote. If he is on the team, he will start. If Trey Lance outplays Jimmy Garoppolo, then Kyle Shanahan won't get pushed back when he brings in Trey Lance for his packages. Here's the thing. With the Niners, here's the thing, okay? So Jimmy should never step foot on the Niners practice field ever again. Ever. He should never throw another pass because – look, we already know how he does business now. He had surgery on what the Niners think is not something that required surgery. They're like, look, he could have not had this. He didn't tell us about this. This is not a serious. So what could happen is has a quarterback competition, plays in a couple preseason games, to compete. Word gets around, he's going to lose. And the Niners are going to cut him and slash his salary. You know what he could do? Oh, shit. My thumb hurts. I re-aggravated my thumb. And, I could have had surgery in the offseason, but I didn't. But technically, I could. It's still messed up. So now I'm having surgery. And now I'm getting $27 million. And now I'm not even your backup quarterback. I'm on IR. So it's it's Lance and Sudfeld and me in the training room making $27 million. How does that sound to you? You tried to play me, but no. You played yourself. Checkmate. I'm just saying it could go that direction. Why do you think it wouldn't? He already showed you what he's going to do. Him and Don Yee.
I think it's more likely that happens than he gets traded. I can tell you that.
Should never step foot on a practice field again because all of a sudden, oh, my thumb, my back, my thumb and my back. They both hurt. Nah, don't let him do that. He will do what's best for him.
Didn't he also have the calf last season? So, oh my God, It
was an injury waiting to happen. The Niners are hoping, maybe a quarterback gets hurt and we can trade. If a quarterback gets hurt in preseason or training camp, my money's on Jimmy. He is the odds-on favorite. If you could bet on this in Vegas, it would be like, even making money betting on Jimmy.
It'd be minus 10,000. Yeah,
exactly.
It would just be ridiculous.
Yeah. Do we have any more? Okay, moving on. So Emmanuel Sanders went on, NFL Network, ESPN, one of these things, and did his best to pump up Jimmy Garoppolo's trade value. I don't know for Jimmy, for the Niners. He essentially said that that Jimmy Garoppolo is like one of the best leaders he's ever been around. And this is a guy who's played with whatever, like Drew Brees, Peyton Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, that he is like in that class of leader, that he leads meetings like a coach, that he is relatable. Like he's everything you want a professional quarterback, teammate, leader to be. What is your response? What is your thoughts on Emmanuel Sanders? Because I know what I think.
Well, first off, I totally buy that he's telling the truth in the sense that look how his teammates support him. Look at how many of these guys will go to bat to defend Jimmy Garoppolo, including the guys on the defense. Mm-hmm. I think what Emmanuel Sanders is saying is how a lot of the 49ers players feel, which is that, hey, Jimmy Garoppolo, he took us from an 0-11 team to the Super Bowl in 2019. He did all of this and that, and look at his win-loss record and
he does everything right off the field.
Absolutely. Yeah, he's just.
There must be a lot of quarterbacks out there who don't. That's my first. It's like there must be some babies out there if Jimmy Garoppolo is really impressing all these professionals. Sorry.
No, I think you're
like
right.
Baker Mayfield is like a freaking baby, right?
Yeah,
total baby.
Yeah.
Well, Jimmy's not a baby. I respect that. He was groomed by Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, who are very grown up. And even though Jimmy doesn't play like Tom Brady, he can comport himself as such and tries to.
Right. And there's just a certain maturity level with Jimmy Garoppolo that you might not see with other quarterbacks. Even Well, I wouldn't say Trey Lance, but just a younger quarterback, like any example of a guy on a rookie deal. So I think the interesting thing, though, and I think I may know where you're going with this, is that if you listen to Emmanuel Sanders, he didn't talk about Jimmy Garoppolo's play at
Not
all.
once. Not once.
No.
So everything he said about him was like, yeah, great. Okay, fine. Like, let him be the quarterback coach. Let him be the mascot of the team. Or, like, why does he have to play? If that's all you can say about him, that he's a leader, that he's a coach in the meetings, make him a coach. There's no salary cap. Make him a $27 million coach. But I don't want him playing. Say one nice thing about how he plays. Emmanuel didn't do it. I'm sure you could, but really, like, no one ever talks about how he plays. Ever.
No.
What other quarterback gets that kind of treatment? Like, he's not a coach. He's a quarterback. And you can't say anything really great about him as a quarterback other than, well, it wasn't his fault he was terrible in the playoffs. He was hurt. Well, that's the problem, though. He's always hurt. So
isn't that why the team made the trade in the first place? Like what are we talking about? The same issues over and over again with Jimmy Garoppolo. So I look, I think these guys will go to the ends of the earth to defend Jimmy Garoppolo because they went through a lot with him. They've been through a lot with him, and they've seen him behind the scenes. So there's certainly a level of respect that they have versus guys like Nick Mullins, who I know you love, but still a guy who, even when he had his opportunity, didn't quite have the team success that they may have had with Jimmy Garoppolo. So I think
he's making he has $110 million.
He's
making 20, and like he could be way above everyone. I think people in Seattle felt that Russell Wilson was no longer relatable. Like, dude, we don't ever see you anymore. You're so rich and famous, you're gone. Jimmy's not like that. Even though he doesn't return text messages, he doesn't big time people in the facility. He's relatable, I guess. And I feel like they appreciate that because there's a lot of quarterbacks who aren't. I mean, Kirk Cousins is a weirdo. Sorry, Kirk. But everyone seems to not like you. I don't know why. It just seems, I don't know. So there's that. But I guess it doesn't matter how many former teammates of Jimmy Garoppolo say this. The league is not impressed, and he's going to have to be a backup for a while unless the 49ers are insane and start him for another year over Trey Lance, and I don't think they are. So he's probably going to have to be a backup for a while, and I'm curious to see how that goes for him because if he has to go to a new team and start over as a backup, how's that going to go? Do you love football that much? Are you willing to sort of be in obscurity? Because you've always been a media darling, even before you proved anything. Now you're rich beyond your wildest dreams. Like, are you built for the Brian Hoyer life? Is that because I feel like that might be what's in store for Jimmy Garoppolo? I don't really see him being a starter. I mean, even if he were to get a job, he'd lose it in a month. I would think either getting hurt or I just don't think he's clearly not a franchise starter anymore. He could be a bridge here and there, but there's always going to be a guy breathing down his neck. He's never going to play well enough to keep the job. How much stomach do you really have for football? You're in your 30s now. You don't need to play. You don't need it anymore. You are set for generations. And now you have a very tedious, frustrating, non-glamorous section of your career coming up. How are you going to handle it? Are you going to go out like Cam Newton, who feels like, you know what? It's kind of beneath me to be a backup. That's kind of how I read Cam.
Yeah, and I think the only way he does even start is if a team trades for him or signs him from him getting cut, and they also draft another quarterback very high who they want to start within year one. That's the only way I see this playing out, where Jimmy Garoppolo even gets the opportunity to start. So I think, look, these guys can defend Jimmy Garoppolo all they want. Eric Armstead can. These players are going to come out of the woodworks to talk great about him, but the league, these teams who would be acquiring him, they certainly value him and see him a different way than the players do.
All I ever hear with these teammates who defend Jimmy Garoppolo is that they like him. You don't understand. I really like Jimmy. You don't understand. Like, I really, really like Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't care. Be friends with him in the offseason. I don't care if you like the
Grant, even as much as you talk about Jimmy Garoppolo or I will, I think we still like Jimmy Garoppolo as a person.
I like Jimmy Garoppolo. He doesn't need to be the quarterback of the team, of the 49ers, but I like him.
That Subway commercial is great. I love it with his grandma in it. You know what? Great. That's fun, man. But go and do commercials.
That dude should not have a commercial. He's a backup quarterback. Also, it's funny that the whole joke in the commercial is that he says, "Oh, just like my nana used to make," and she's like, "I don't cook," and he's like, "You don't," and she's like, "It's a good thing he's good looking." As in the whole joke is everyone knows he's not smart, and that's true. He is. I've been calling him Zoolander since 2018. It just got. Is it not fair to call him I'm not going to call him an airhead. I'm not going to call him an airhead, but that's the joke in the commercial.
He's a little ditzy, Grant.
He's a little ditzy. He is. I'm sorry. I'll take. I don't want a ditzy quarterback. I want a quarterback who's a nerd, a freaking nerd who's obsessed with football. Not a guy like, man, I'll get to the playbook in July. No. All right, let's talk about Trey Lance. Enough of Jimmy. That was a half hour on Jimmy Garoppolo. Let's talk about how the 49ers are putting Trey Lance, whether they know it or not. They're putting him in a position where he has to be elite right away. There is really no room for growth for him at this point.
Yeah, the margin of error is pretty slim for Trey Lance right now because the 49ers are relying on him to push them over the top in their next 2 to 3 years. That's their Super Bowl window with Trey Lance because they already wasted a year of his contract not playing him. And with these rookie guys, you only get 4 years of their deal before they become expensive, before you're paying them $40 million and you have to make cuts on the rest of your roster like we see the Chiefs dealing with right now. Like we see so many of these teams who eventually have to sign these elite quarterbacks to these max contracts. Your team is going to get worse. And right now with the 49ers, they're putting so much pressure on Trey Lance to be elite for a few reasons. For one, they invested like so much draft capital in him. It's pretty ridiculous.
They gave the Deshaun Watson package up for the 3 first-round picks they spent on him. He was their first-round pick last year, their first-round pick this year, and their first-round pick next year. No matter how they want to say it, that's what happened.
Yeah, I mean, I think looking at the packages comparatively, like to the Rams, they didn't even spend as close to as much on Matthew Stafford, who's a known quantity. Yeah, and they were paying him
3 firsts for Lance.
They were paying him $20 million. And on top of all of that, they're also keeping Jimmy Garoppolo in their quarterback room. Right now, the 49ers have the second most expensive quarterback room in the NFL. The only team higher is the Tennessee Titans. So the entire benefit of having Trey Lance on the rookie deal is null. It doesn't matter anymore.
You're spending it on his backup quarterback.
Exactly.
It's like if the Rams traded for Stafford, but gave up more and kept Goff because they weren't quite sure. That's what they did. The Niners did. Hey, you can be our quarterback, but you better be great because we still like Jared Goff. We went to a Super Bowl, Jared. Like, thanks for the vote of confidence, dude. Yeah. Do you want me or not? What do you want to do?
Yeah. And by the time Trey Lance even potentially becomes the player they want him to become, my biggest fear right now is that they'll price out the rest of their team because they have to pay Trey Lance, right? If he becomes the player they want and the player they traded up for, they're going to be paying him at minimum $40 million a year in year 5. That with quarterbacks, you don't get to do the 5th-year option. You don't get to do the franchise tag thing, not with young quarterbacks, not in that kind of way. Yeah. It's really expensive, and they have this roster in place already that they could have made better around Trey Lance. Instead, they're keeping the current-ish roster / making the offensive line worse, adding one corner and making their special teams better. So in my mind, they could have taken all the advantages that Trey Lance affords them with his rookie deal, poured all those assets into making them great this offseason. Or, you know what, if you don't want to do it this offseason, you can do the plan we were talking about and do it next offseason. But they don't seem to be doing that right now. So unless they are actually willing to cut Jimmy Garoppolo before week 1, if they can't trade him, this plan is ridiculous. And it was ridiculous when it happened in the first place, Grant. If I told you a year ago today that the 49ers would have Jimmy Garoppolo and the quarterback they drafted on their roster, what would your reaction be?
I probably wouldn't do a show with you anymore. Like, this guy's crazy. He just says anything. I'm not inviting him back. Are you kidding me? Yeah.
And I think even the most –
there's so many ways the Niners could have taken pressure off of Lance. You could have made the offensive line better. You could have taken Jimmy Garoppolo out of the locker room and gotten him off the team. You could have really brought in a lot of other players, so it wasn't all about the quarterback. But now it's like they went to the NFC Championship game, and they're going to make a switch at quarterback, but they're keeping Jimmy there. So it's basically the thing is like, hey, man, if you falter at all, we're going back to Jimmy. Because we know that there's a base level of success we can achieve with him, and you better put us over the top. You better show within a month that we're going to win the Super Bowl this year with you. Otherwise, we're just going to say you're not ready. You need a little bit more aging in French oak barrels, and we're going to go back to Jimmy. I mean, that's the kind of that's the pressure it's at. Like, you got to be an MVP candidate, or you got to have us like 13-4. Otherwise, there's no time for you to grow on the job, buddy. We're going to switch right back. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's like switching from your girlfriend to your side chick, but you'd be like, hey, you better have this down day one. You better be the best girlfriend. You better have everything. Otherwise, I'm going back because she's a really good cook. We may not get along that well, but her food, phenomenal. So you better.
I already have my stuff at her apartment,
and I'm not going to do anything. That's how the Niners are acting right now. It's like, man, I don't feel like you're setting up your next girlfriend for success. I feel like she's going to let you down.
No. And if Trey Lance plays next season, even if, he's looking good by the end of the season, what if the 49ers are 9-8 and they miss the playoffs? What's the reaction going to be like then? Because everyone talks about how much of a winner Jimmy Garoppolo is, right? Yeah. How's that going to look when he doesn't make the playoffs? Or if you do make the playoffs, Grant, let's say best case scenario, you win the division. If you don't get to the NFC Championship game, there will still be all these people who will tell you, hey, no, Trey isn't ready yet. They should have stuck with Jimmy. Look how far they got with it. Like all this sort of pressure that is just completely unnecessary.
How many fans and fan journalists are itching to say, hey, the Niners would have made it to the NFC Championship game if they kept Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, that tweet is already scheduled. That's in the drafts so that they can put it as soon as the 49ers don't make it to the NFC Championship. Niners would have made it. Oh, word? You sure? Jimmy, how many games would Jimmy Garoppolo last without Laken Tomlinson on the offensive line? I mean, we took Weston Richburg out, and Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt. What was it? Week 2,
I believe,
in 2020. You took one starter out. Now you take out Laken Tomlinson, who's better than Weston. Okay, I'm just saying, I have a bad feeling that the Niners keep Jimmy, and Trey's a starter, and both quarterbacks end up playing and both end up getting hurt because, I mean, they're not really setting up any quarterback for success. I have a bad feeling that Nate Sudfeld's going to start a game this season. I don't want to put that out. Maybe I reverse jinxed. I have a bad feeling that Sudfeld's going to play football this year. That's the worst possible outcome. So hopefully that doesn't happen. All right, moving on. This was a big debate on Twitter. Vish started the debate. Vish, God love him, said, I know I'm going to get canceled for this. I don't think Frank Gore should be in the Hall of Fame. Ben, what do you think? Should Frank Gore be in the Hall of Fame?
Well, first off, Grant, I'm just going to preface this by saying that I don't have the best history on the 49ers. I'm not going to pretend like I'm the most knowledgeable Frank Gore fan.
Okay.
But I will talk about my Hall of Fame criteria a little bit, and then I'll talk about why I think he may or may not get in. Well, first of all, I think he's getting in, actually. Let me get that out of the way. I think Frank Gore is absolutely going to be a Hall of Famer. I've absolutely no doubt about that because of the career statistics he's put up. But to me, a Hall of Famer is a player who is a top 5 elite player at their position, one of the best for an extended period of time with absolutely no doubt or reservation. And I just don't know how I feel about Frank Gore when it comes to that. I think he has the career statistics that you would want in terms of yards, of course. But then when you look at some of the other statistics, Grant, he's just not quite in the Hall of Fame range as maybe some other players. His yards per attempt, he's outside the top 100 players, I believe, in NFL history, about 4.3 yards per attempt. I might be a little off on that, but I think my overall point is that when I look at a player like Eli Manning, for example, I don't think he's a Hall of Famer in my mind because he is not an elite quarterback. He was never one of those top quarterbacks who is the ultimate difference maker. Now, he won a Super Bowl with this team and he had 2 excellent playoff runs. But to me, you have to be that top tier elite talent elite player. And I just don't think Frank Gore was quite that guy in comparison to the rest of the guys who were playing with him at the time. And I think there were a lot of great backs. And if you are going to make the argument for Frank Gore using my argument against me, you can say, look how many great backs there were at the time. Look how many great running backs. I mean, there were in the early 2000s. Like the top of that list is extremely good. And I just don't think Frank Gore is quite there. So that's where I'm at, Grant. But I'll also just say this.
No, Bish agrees with you.
I could be
Eric
totally
Crocker
wrong.
agrees with you. Eric Crocker also thinks he's not a Hall of Famer. I do think he's a Hall of Famer. So let me try to lay out the argument. The way I see it is he was never all pro. That's a weird quirk. Third all-time leading rusher was never all pro. There were a lot of great running backs in his era. I think he probably should have been all pro. Like in 2006, he ran for like 1,600 yards. Larry Johnson was
Grant,
all pro
he was actually all pro second team.
He was second team a couple of times. Right. He was really good. And he was on teams with no offensive innovation, where everything was about hand off to Frank Gore and let him run into 8-man boxes for a long time, like basically for his prime. And then Harbaugh got there right at the end of his 20s, and really Frank Gore took off. But he was at his best back when I was in college. And again, like there was nothing going on those teams. So I think his numbers could have been even better. But the reason I say he's a Hall of Famer is like, I hear what you're saying. And that's exactly what Crocker and Vish said. Like he was never really that top tier running back in the league. I think for running backs getting into the Hall of Fame, I don't think that matters. Just in terms of like, I think what matters for running backs, at least for the voters that vote, is longevity. Like it's running back. It's like, I know that passing stats have exploded. So just being top 10 passing yards doesn't necessarily mean you're a Hall of Famer, because running stats haven't exploded. I mean, it's still hard to run, and just to have a long career as a running back is incredibly impressive. So the fact that he's the third all-time leading rusher in the NFL, like the top 16 guys are in the NFL, are in the Hall of Fame. The only two who aren't are Adrian Peterson and Frank Gore, who probably are going to make it. So just based on how the voters vote, I think at that position is pretty cut and dry. If you have, I don't know what the marker is, but if you're top 16 in all-time rush, you're probably going to make it. So if I had to bet in Vegas, I would bet strongly that he's going to make it. Whether he should or not is a different discussion. I think that longevity matters in the NFL. Like, I think it's great to give someone like Terrell Davis made it in a few years ago. And he had like 3 years, but they were great. And he was the best runner. He was legit MVP candidate, won Super Bowls. I understand making exceptions for players like that, players like Gale Sayers, whose career was cut short because of injury. I mean, you could even argue Bo Jackson should be under the same criteria, but I think at the same time, there is a place for people who have a very long body of work. I don't think you poo-poo that. I mean, I think that's kind of the whole point. Like, you lasted in the league a long time. That's something to celebrate. I think that's something to celebrate.
Well, and I think especially at that position, just look at the way the position is trending. I mean, the way teams act now, they won't even draft running backs in the first round. They refuse to. So I will say,
I mean, if John Riggins is a Hall of Famer, he was never an all-pro. Frank Gore is probably a Hall of Famer, I would say. I mean, Edgerrin James is a Hall of Famer. I thought Frank Gore was better for longer than Edgerrin James was, although I know Edgerrin James got to play with Peyton Manning and defenses that were tripping about the pass. I'm just saying. I know he had a lot of big years, but I thought Frank Gore was better than Edgerrin James. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, and I would say the one thing to maybe argue against Frank Gore is that when he was running, when he was getting the maximum load in terms of carries and just workload, it was a much more running league than it is now, than it was if you look at 5 years into his career. I will say he may have had an advantage in terms of that the league was more running focused, at least for the early part of his career. So you could say that benefited him. But I'm not going to argue that he will get into the Hall of Fame. He's absolutely going to get in. I don't have any doubt about that. Just based off the prerequisites like you went over, I think it's pretty obvious he's going to get in.
Yeah, it's to me, the running back position is very much a counting stats position. It's like baseball. Like, you got 3,000 hits, And well, good. You made it. You did it. You got 500 home runs, dude. You made it. Like you made it. You might have never been the number one slugger of your time or the number one hitter, but you hit it. You reached a milestone. Like Frank Gore, real quick. Frank Gore has 1,600 rushing yards. Only 3 guys in the history of the league have ever done that. Tip of the cap. Well done, Frank. That's a very. I mean, also, running backs they last like 2.5 years. Saquon Barkley, he's not going to touch that. Christian McCaffrey. He's not going to touch that. Those are guys like Christian McCaffrey was the best for a minute or was in the conversation. Right. But Frank Gore had a better career. Sorry, Christian. Yeah. Anyway, moving on. Javon Kinlaw, the hype train is starting. He's posting videos on Instagram where he's working. Well, not really running. He was running up the field in slow motion. There might have been music. The lighting might have been. It was very artistic. And inspires hope for everyone that wants Javon Kinlaw to be good, which is, Niner fans, Niner personnel, people. How encouraged are you seeing Javon Kinlaw run?
This doesn't change a thing for me. I'm sorry. Like, I hope he can run by this point. Like, it would be more concerning if they were like, yeah, he's not running yet. He's like what?
He's still in the pool. He's working out in the pool. Great. He's on the field. Nice. It's April 5th. He didn't have a video like this 4 weeks ago? Okay, so he's on the field. That's a good start.
I think the one thing that I could see from him that would give me a lot of optimism would be if we saw him with reps against an offensive lineman. That might be a good way to see where he's at. But no, I just don't make much of this. Like, to me, it's like the Instagram videos we see of like these receivers working out. It's like, go show me you running routes, catching balls from quarterbacks. Like, show me you doing football things so that I have confidence in you moving forward. Javon Kinlaw, until I see more evidence that he's getting closer and closer to me, this is just one of those things. Like you said, it's good for PR. It gets people excited. All the 49ers fans accounts can repost the videos, but I just don't make much of this at all.
Yeah, like my question is, okay, great. So how long is he going to be playing football until he has a setback? Because this to me is giving me big Jalen Hurd vibes. In the offseason, people don't forget Jalen Hurd. What about Jalen Hurd is going to be a huge, and I heard he's healthy. I know a guy who knows a guy who said he heard from a friend of a mail carrier that delivered a package to his house that said he walked to the front door, no limp, looked great. And actually cartwheeled away from the door, did a back handspring, real 10 out of 10 landing. That's what I heard through the grapevine. And then every year it'd be like, oh, I saw Jalen Hurd. He was walking. He actually ran around. He looks great. Did you see how he ran? He looks phenomenal. And then he would practice for a day and you'd be like, well, where's Jalen Hurd? Oh, he's not here. Oh, well, we'll have to ask Kyle about that afterward. Kyle be like, oh yeah, he had a setback, but he did just a little bit of soreness. It's just, there's nothing. He'll be right back. And then he's like, actually, he's retired. Actually, he's never playing football ever. It's like, that's all. Can you just go through all of training camp without getting hurt? Then I'll okay. This seems like he's turned a corner.
Yeah. Well, and this regime has burned us with
Senior Bowl, man.
Yeah.
He couldn't. He went home early.
And that's why I think it's more comparable to the D Ford situation, where you look at what the 49ers, it's not exactly the same, right? But dealing with what they're dealing with, having the knowledge beforehand of these injuries, the 49ers should have known better. And it's just, it's disappointing that they didn't. But with Javon Kinlaw moving forward, I guess he's running.
I guess he's running. I guess that's good. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. What else are you going to do at this point? I guess it's better than nothing. It's better than him being in a cold. It's better than the James Wiseman. I don't know if you don't follow the Warriors, but they drafted James Wiseman. And
I know about James Wiseman.
They're just always really terrible. So this is better than James Wiseman. Yeah,
they should have drafted LaMelo Ball. That even in the moment, to me, that was one of those things.
You know why they didn't know? Because there's beef between Steve Kerr and LeVar Ball. LeVar Ball called him the Milli Vanilli of coaches, and I think Kurt called him like the Kardashians of families or something. Well, keep going, Kurt. Good job, Steve. Way to go. All right. Ray says this guy next to Grant probably never touched a football in his life. Gore's Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
In
Oh
his
my
face, man, he never
God.
touched a football. I bet he has touched a football. I bet you. I would bet heavy money that he's touched one.
Well, I've touched a football before, and I can
Bingo.
also tell you this: I'm credentialed, and I'm going to college football practices later this afternoon.
In your
So
face. Ray, if that is your real name. All right, moving on. The Niners met with Nebraska wide receiver Samori Toure, who I've never freaking heard of. It's big news.
no.
And a lot of people are meeting with this guy. He was a transfer from Montana. He's 6'3", ran a 4.4 or something, and gets down the field. Had a pretty good year at Nebraska last year. What do you think of this news that the Niners are meeting with Samori Toure, who might be a 7th-round pick or an undrafted free agent?
Yeah, this is an undrafted free agent to me. And also one other thing with him, he's 24 years old right
He's
now.
24 years old.
So this isn't exactly, your normal college prospect. And I think the thing with him, you kind of hit all the main points, which is explosive athlete. He actually had some nice combine numbers in terms of his 3-cone. He had a sub-7 3-cone. That's really good, and that's a good
Niners all over that.
Oh yeah. No, that is a really important metric in terms of wide receivers. People look at the 40s all the time. That doesn't necessarily translate as well. The 3-cone time is important. So I guess he did well in that, and he's an explosive guy. Maybe they see him as a special teamer. I don't really know what his special team experience was. I was trying to find some more information on him. But he's a yak guy too, so he kind of fits the 49ers profile. I would say overall, though, to me, this shows, or doesn't show exactly for sure, but it gives me an inkling that maybe they're going to be more aggressive towards the wide receiver position in the draft. And this isn't the guy they would be their number one guy they'd be taking in the 4th or 3rd round or something like that. But I think, Grant, if you look at the way the position is going in general with how much teams are spending on these guys once they do hit free agency, getting wide receivers in the draft, getting them year after year, getting starters who you can play with all the guys who already have injury risks. I mean, Debo and Ayuk both have injury history in their career, especially in these last 2 to 3 years. They need to draft another receiver, and it needs to be in the 3rd or 4th round. Now, this can be another guy you take maybe in round 7, you take him as an undrafted free agent. But overall, to me, I think I look at this more as a receiver position thing. They need to be more aggressive with the position. They need to get another guy in the building who is at least capable of starting. Let's say if a Debo or an Ayuk go down for a month, what are you going to do with those outside guys, right? You're not going to stick Ray McCloud out there necessarily. So they need another starter at the position, and I think they should draft another guy probably at the end of round 3. If not, maybe early round 4. But this is another guy too who you can probably get as an undrafted free agent.
Yeah, I think this kind of reveals the kind of wide receiver the Niners are looking for and the price range. I mean, if you thought the Niners were going to draft a wide receiver in round 2 or round 3, maybe. But this kind of indicates that they're sort of looking at the Dollar General wide receivers, and it makes sense to me because while they do need depth, they have their 2 starters. Ayuk, Debo, they're not necessarily trying to bring in competition for either one. They also have their number 3 guy. They do like Javon Jennings. Now, Jennings isn't proven. Like, Ayuk and Debo have multiple seasons under their belt. Jennings has like half a season of producing, but they still like him. I think they'd like to hedge their bets with him and bring in someone who not can compete, but at least do similar things, maybe be a little bit faster. Seems like this guy would factor in. I mean, if you draft him in round 7 or take him as an undrafted free agent, he's not replacing Javon Jennings. You don't have to be like, well, we like Jennings, but we spent a 4th round pick on him, so we kind of have to leapfrog. Because the Niners do play that roster politic game a little bit. It's why Richie James Jr. never got targets, but Dante Pettis did. Like, maybe they don't want to do that. Maybe they want to keep Javon Jennings in his role and have someone right there with him because Ray McCloud's different. So maybe this is where they're looking, round 6, round 7, undrafted free agent. That's exciting.
Yeah.
It's a historically great class of wide receivers, and they're looking at some dude who come on. Some dude named – anyway.
Well, and that's my point, Grant, is they need to go after – they need to go after another outside guy, though, because they really only have Ayuk and Debo right now. I mean, as things stand, who's that third outside receiver? I don't think they have that guy on their roster right now. So they need to go get that guy some way, somehow. I would prefer they invest more in the position, but I think you're probably more right. They go 5th, 6th, 7th round, go for a traits guy, big, explosive, whatever happens in his college career. Maybe he doesn't have all the production, but this guy certainly fits the bill of that sort of player. More of a 7th rounder and drafted free agent, though.
I wouldn't be surprised if the Niners draft 2 wide receivers or 1 and an undrafted free agent. I mean, they only have 4 on their roster. They usually carry 6. They could use a small, fast guy like Travis Benjamin who runs a 4.3. They could use a tall, fast guy like this. I mean, they might look for different types of wide receivers, but don't get your hopes up for like a top 100 picks at a wide receiver. Although, if Christian Watson falls, I'm sure they would take him. All right, moving on.
They have to if he's there.
Yeah. Okay, so Todd McShay, mock draft season coming out. Todd McShay, ESPN, very plugged in. He has the Niners drafting safety Nick Cross at 61. Real quick, if you haven't heard of Nick Cross, he's from Maryland. He's 6 feet, 212. Kind of, bigger than Jimmy Ward. It's almost Jaquaski Tart size. He runs a 4.34, 37 vert. Hell of an athlete, a lot of range. What do you think of this potential pick for the 49ers?
Sounds like a Jaquiski Tart replacement. I mean, this is the guy who kind of fits that bill. You mentioned his height and his weight and his speed. Running a 4.34 at 212 pounds is extremely impressive. I think it blows the water out of any guy at that weight. So I think that was good. I think the one concerning thing I look at with him is, and I don't think the PFF grade is the end all be all of, prospects, but year over year from 2019 to 2020 to 2021, he got worse each season. So that is very concerning because even if you don't believe in that metrics as much, it's the same thing year over year. So whatever they're grading, however they determine that, he's getting worse according to their system. And he did have a below average coverage grade. So this seems like a guy to me who's going to be more of your in the box guy, who is going to get involved at the line of scrimmage a little bit more maybe. And then you want to rely on Jimmy Ward as more of your coverage guy and your versatile coverage guy, right? We know he can play all the different positions. So I think this is a good fit, but I would also prefer if they would go after someone who maybe has just better coverage skills and better slot versatility too. If you're going to draft a safety this high, to me, it has to be someone who is at least average in coverage to above average, at least from where you're drafting them. And they have to be able to play multiple different spots in the defensive backfield. And that to me is the key for the 49ers at the top of this draft is positional versatility. Because I think they really need a lot of that right now, especially on defense, especially in the secondary. They have guys who can do some things, but they don't have guys who, besides Jimmy Ward, who can go to all kinds of different spots. So I would want to try and find someone maybe like a Jalen Petrie, even though he might go higher, who has that kind of versatility, who you can trust at nickel. So I know a lot of people are really high on Nick Cross right now. I would be more comfortable, though, taking him maybe 10 to 15 spots back if the 49ers, let's say, trade down, which we've seen them do in these last few drafts. They trade down, they trade up a lot. So I don't know if I would expect them to sit at 61. And this to me is the type of guy that if they move down to pick 70, 75 or so, they might be able to still grab him.
I actually think Nick Cross would be a good fit for the 49ers. I do see that he's not great in coverage. I think that's actually something the Niners would be okay with because Jimmy Ward is your coverage guy. And instead of having Tart's good in coverage too, but instead of having another Jimmy Ward who's a little bit bigger, what's nice about Cross is you could actually play him in center field while Jimmy Ward's on man-to-man coverage on third down. And Cross has elite range. He runs that 4.3, which you want. And he had 3 picks last year. He had 5 picks in college. So you wouldn't have him in man-to-man coverage. But as a single high safety, I actually think he'd be good. And then he, when you want to use him around the line of scrimmage, you don't have to have him in coverage, but he did have 4 sacks in college. So he could be used as a, like a blitzer, kind of like Derwin James is. Only thing is he might not be there at 61. If McShay thinks so, great. But he could go up a little bit higher. 6 feet, 212 safeties that run 4.3s. No matter how good they are in man-to-man coverage, there's still a role for. It seems like he can play both free and strong. There's a lot you can do with him. I'm just saying. I think it'd be a pretty good pick. I'm not sure he'll be there at 61.
Yeah, he might not, but the reason he may be is just because of the position he plays, right? I think safeties in general are going to be getting pushed down the draft board. Look at like a
Yeah.
Kyle Hamilton who's at the top of
Yeah.
the draft. He was like the consensus top 2 player overall, and right now there are mocks where he's not a top 10 pick or where he's not even the first safety taken. So I think safeties overall are getting pushed down the board. But if he's there, I think it would be a fine pick. I like some other fits better. But like you said, I think he would complement Jimmy Ward really excellently in that sense. So
Yeah, I mean,
it'd be
it would
pretty
be a
good.
good pick in the sense that they could argue he's the best player available. He'd start right away. He could probably I mean, I'm just saying I'm not a Nick Cross expert, but they could do a lot worse. It'd be better than reaching for an offensive tackle because you don't know what's up with Mike McGlinchey. I think it'd be better than that. But again, I don't know if he'll even be there at 61. McShay
Well,
seems thinking.
and just with the position overall, I like taking safeties in round 2 rather than like a tackle, like you mentioned, for example.
Niners haven't
You
done it
can
in a very
still,
long time. Yeah.
yeah, you can still
But
get
you can get
that
like an elite
value.
safety in round 2. Are you really going to get an elite tackle in round 2? Probably not.
No, definitely not.
No.
It's just not going to happen. Those are developmental guys at that spot. So, look, it's all about positional value to me in terms of drafting. I'm not a best player available or a fit kind of guy. I always try and go about where the value is in the draft, taking a guard in round 2 or round 3 rather than round 1, taking safeties later, taking wide receivers later, things like that. So I think the safety fit, yeah, it'd be really good here at 61. And I really like Nick Cross. I think it'd be a really good pick.
Jaguayo 56 says Jalen Petrie played the slot and safety, very versatile, great tackler. Yeah, he sounds exactly like Jimmy Ward, except maybe even better.
Yeah.
I don't know. Shout out Jimmy
And
Ward. Okay.
the nickel guy I like real quick is Jojo Doman, who is kind of an outside linebacker, kind of a corner. He's 6'3". He's huge. He has slot experience. He has in the box experience. He can blitz. That's my guy, but you can take him later on.
6'1",
Yeah.
230, man. That's a big slot.
Yeah, it is. He's an interesting prospect for sure. And you could take him at the end of round 3, probably, maybe even round 4. I don't know exactly where he's going right now, but him, Marcus, is it Jones or Johnson, I believe, from Houston? Those 2 guys are the nickel guys for me.
Okay. Next topic. Pro Football Focus has the 49ers drafting a cornerback at 61. Martin Emerson. What you need to know about Martin Emerson is he went to Mississippi State. He's 6'2", 201. It's very long arms, 33 and a half inches. Also ran a 4.53, which is slow for a cornerback. What do you think of this potential pick? That's 61.
To me, this seems like another fit pick for the 49ers in terms of that he matches more of that Ambry Thomas style player, even though he's not as fast, right? He is going to be a man press guy. I believe at the next level, that's how they're going to want to play him.
That 4.53. Good luck.
That's at least how he was being played somewhat in college.
I ran a 4.51 when I was 18.
On track. You take any chance you can, Grant, with that. You always got to throw it out there, man.
I have one freaking witness. He was there. I got to get him on the show, man. Damn, it's important because I couldn't do that anymore. Anyway,
yeah, you need someone to cross-reference that. But what I will say is, even though he's 4.53, he only allowed 1 catch over 25 yards last year. So this is a guy who does not give up explosive plays, who is really good in coverage. He's had like 14 PBUs since 2020. So to me, yeah, this is a fit pick. And the only thing I don't like, again, going to this, he doesn't have nickel experience. And I think for the 49ers, if they're drafting a corner, it's got to be someone who has positional versatility because they need someone who can play nickel in a pinch if they, Diamador Lenore doesn't work out, or if they can't play Emmanuel Mosley there for whatever reason. They need that guy who has more experience at that spot. So that's the only thing I don't like about this pick. But I think he fits the 49ers in almost every other way. I think he's a good fit.
I hate this pick. To me, this is Pro Football Focus trying to like promote their grades. Like they gave him good grades. Right. Is there any evidence that Pro Football Focus college grades are they any better at predicting professional success than Lance Zierlein or any other of these professional scouts? I don't think so. So to me, like This is a guy who's projected to go late round 3, early round 4 that they're saying, well, actually, we gave him a good grade by our draft guide. Like, no, this would be a reach. He's slow. The Niners, he had 1 pick in college. Like, the Niners have, I'm sure he's a great tackler, though. The Niners have big, athletic, good tackling DBs. They've cornered the market on those type of DBs. This would be awful. At 61, first of all, they're not going to do it because they haven't drafted a corner before round 3.
Oh no!
Since like freaking George W. Bush was the president of the country. It's not going to happen. If they took him at 105, I would hold my nose because you don't need more corners like this. But it would make more sense at the end of round 3 than the end of round 2. 4-5-3 corner. I mean, yeah, if you want to play like freaking cover 2 all the time, yeah, do it. For sure.
Well, and when you sent me, when you were sending me over the topics, and this was one of the guys, I was like, pick 61? That's kind of
really,
yeah.
BFF,
So
okay.
I don't know about that, but hey, I'm not gonna poo-poo PFF's grade because I'm actually trying to work for them. My brother works for them, so hey, I love PFF. Your grades are awesome.
They're the
Your
best.
college grades are 100%.
I heard that they definitely do predict success in the NFL.
Absolutely, they've never been wrong about anything. I don't think.
Yeah, definitely hired my man Ben too. He's really smart. It runs in the family, apparently. All right, well, that's an hour-long show. Ben came in right at the end. I appreciate you. This was a hell of a show, man. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I had a good time doing this.
You're out.
Just go subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's my name, Ben Meyerson, and then football at the end of it. Go do that.
Yeah, baby. All right. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll be back when you least expect it.
Ooh.